Welcome to Politicus, the only podcast that discusses politics and public service from the Portuguese-American perspective. Here we discuss everything from federal policy, local issues, and U.S.-Portugal relations with the goal of driving more discussion and awareness of the issues affecting our nation, our community, and what we as Portuguese-Americans can do about it. And now, Politicus. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Politicus. My name is Angela Simoes, and I'm here with Denise Borges. Hey, Denise, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Angela?
Doing well, doing well. And today we have our first supervisor, county supervisor, that we'll be speaking with, Craig Pedersen, who is a Kings County Supervisor, District 4. Welcome, Craig.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Oh, thanks for the time. So we're just going to jump right in. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got your start, and then also a little bit about Kings County specifically.
Sure. Yeah. So the start was, growing up on a farm as a young man and just enjoying that. We, from the farming side, we raised dairy replacement cattle, corn, cotton, wheat, and anything else that seemed to turn a profit. And so as a young man, that's where I grew up. I had a dog and a BB gun and, learned farming from a very young age. Went through local grammar school, high school here, and 2 years of junior college, and felt I knew everything I needed to know, and dove in as a farmer. So that was in the early 80s, 1987. My dad and I formed a partnership, and that was in 1987. And we operated under that for a number of years. Even currently exists, but got exposure, kind of the political side from the agricultural industry. I served in a number of positions. I chaired the cotton industry, the California cotton industry, the California Cotton Growers Association, the California Wheat Commission, served as chairman of our county farm bureau. And so really formed I don't know if I want to call it a love, maybe a love-hate relationship with how politics and things of that regulatory things affect the farming industry, and from 1988 through 2002, 2003, I was in Washington D.C. on an average of 4 to 5 times a year, trying to affect policy. Later in my life, in 2002, currently at that time I was chairman of our local farm bureau. We had some concerns about some air quality regulations that were coming down. EPA and the Clean Air Act. We're looking at dust issues and effects of health on folks. And so I had some questions for the person that held my seat currently. And I called my county supervisor, who we have a local air district that's made up of county supervisors, one of each county in a region from Bakersfield all the way up to Merced. And so anyways, I called my local air rep and said, hey, we have some concerns from an industry standpoint, and I'd like to talk to you about them. And I made that phone call, and I didn't get a return phone call. And I made another one, still didn't get a return. And I said, well, maybe we'll just have to have this discussion in public. And so I decided to run for office the first time in 2002, ran, made it through the primary, and lost the general election by about 150 votes in my first attempt, and ran against a guy that was a 3-term incumbent. And so I learned a lot about that. But midway through the process, my father passed away, who obviously is my farming partnership buddy and lifelong dad. So that changed kind of everything, kind of refocused on farming operation. And as a son, you never really have control of how things go, and, as a partner. And it really gave me the autonomy to, look into my farming operation and make some tweaks that I wanted to make, and just was extremely successful. And I've done that for a number of years. But today, with all of the regulatory effects that are hammering down on top of business in California, made a really tough decision to sell the farming operation about 2 years ago. And not that it was financially strapped, it was just the regulatory side, and being, our operation was about 1,000 acres. And so the the economics of an operation that size and all of the regulatory burden that fell on me, just decided it was time to move on. And so sold the property and reinvested in commercial property, and went back to my next love, which was, the political side of things, and having the opportunity to make a difference in my community. And that's in 2015, ran for office and was elected. And I'm in my third year of my first term and enjoying every minute of it.
So at this time, you're considering continuing on with in the supervisor role?
Yeah, it's an interesting job, and the learning is sharp and uphill, and so it takes you. It's like anything else; you'll never quit learning. But learning a lot of the different policies that affect everything that the county does with respect to, we're the last provider of health for those that can't afford health care, child care issues, fire protection, police protection. The list of that the county does is a long one. So having the opportunity to step into that and to learn some of that and to take a leadership role in your community is something that I was very fortunate that the community bought into, and again, as I've said, just really enjoying serving my community.
And Craig, as Angela said, a little bit about, if you don't mind, we have international podcasts, and so we have listeners throughout the U.S. and not only throughout the U.S. but different parts of the world. A little bit about Kings County, because at times when people think of California, they think of Hollywood and San Francisco and maybe Silicon Valley. But Kings County is kind of in the heart of the San Joaquin Valley.
Right. We're this little county of 150,000 people. We are driven by agriculture. Probably 95% of the economy is agriculture in Kings County, and we do have 3 prisons in the county, one of which is known for housing Charlie Manson. Not something we want to be known for, but again, we are an agrarian-based society, and so it really plays into the suit of knowledge that I have, and it's just an enjoyable role. The challenges are always great. A small county trying to fund all the mandates that the state sends down, all of the healthcare side of things. And then, from a tax-based standpoint, making sure that you do all you can responsibly with the tax dollars that our community provides to operate the county. And so, yeah, it's a great county, great community. There's 4 major cities: Hanford, Lemoore, Corcoran, and Avenel. So not a big county. I was talking with a county supervisor out of San Diego a while back, and he represented over 1 million people. So my district, I have 27,000. So we get a little better intimacy. We have no staff here. We all operate under our own accord. We make all of our appointments. We book all of our appointments. All of our travel is on our own, and not from the cost, but no, it's really a great thing. After being an employer for most of my life, I really enjoy the autonomy and kind of enjoy. I guess I would enjoy having staff if it was something that we could afford, but it's not, and so I get to have that direct contact with my constituents.
One other question in that aspect, and getting yourself involved in the political world, and as you mentioned, you're basically now obviously a supervisor and employee of the county and of the state and of our government system. But before, with your involvement in all these different agriculture commissions or industry-related commissions that you were part of, the Farm Bureau, etc., how, in your thoughts, being a Portuguese background in a county that has a pretty good population of Portuguese background, Americans of Portuguese ancestry, how is your involvement, or how do you look at the Portuguese community and how that has kind of shaped who you are today?
Hey, I clearly, I obviously very proud of my heritage. My great-grandfather immigrated from Peak. So it's something that you grow up with. I think, part of the challenge today is staying connected I know we all attended a meeting, this PALITICUS meeting in Sacramento recently, and gave me kind of exposure to that organization. But growing up as a young man, that was a good portion of my heritage is Portuguese, and the dairy industry seems to really fit a lot of what the Portuguese heritage contains and brought over to this country. But more importantly, the work ethic, and I tell you that work ethic is immeasurable and hard to replace or to even explain. It's just people that they want to do what's right for their family. They work hard, come up for air every once in a while, and then put their head back down and go back to work. And I think from that side of things, from sometimes I think as someone of Portuguese heritage, sometimes we overlook the importance of being involved in government. And so it's been nice to have that exposure. And it's part of who I am and who I represent. And, obviously the county is a very large dairy county, although, local pricing, statewide pricing has put, some of those folks in a tough spot. And we've lost probably 50 to 60 dairies in this county over probably the last 5 years just due to milk pricing. But it's not for the hard work and success that they all had. And so it hurts to see folks leave, the industry. But again, they're proud people, and they land on their feet, and they go back to work and do it again, and make sure that their families are provided for.
Talking about milk pricing, and then also, I think if anybody has heard of Kings County outside of California, they may equate it with water issues. So what are some maybe misconceptions or things that you would like people to understand about what's happening in Kings County and what's driving those prices and things like that? Do you want to, is there this opportunity to really educate some folks on, listen, we're here on the ground, and let me tell you really what's happening here?
Well, I think as our country grows, and when you look at California, again, I know we talked earlier about, people know where Los Angeles and San Francisco are at. And so we're this small agricultural agrarian-based society that's caught in between, basically as two cities, is roughly about 10 million people. And I will always remember this number, and it's that, in the early 1900s, 99% of Americans had a direct tie to agriculture. Their family members were either a farmer or their aunt or their uncle. Everybody had to grow their own food. So there was always this acknowledgement of the importance of food production from a health and safety standpoint. And today, less than 1% of Americans have any involvement or knowledge of agriculture. And so with that comes challenges. And one of those challenges, obviously, for us in production agriculture is, water is the sole source of plants and growing plants and survival. And, there has been, obviously a move to reallocate or maybe a lack of knowledge just of the importance of water to the food supply, because, people aren't involved in their very busy daily lives. And so trying to educate folks, there hasn't been a new water project built in California since the mid 70s, yet, our population then was 15 million. Today it's approaching 40 million. And so it's put a big stress on the infrastructure of California. And with the Central Valley being a very small voting base, we try to, educate folks into the importance of food and food production and the reality of, there is an industry in the Central Valley. It's agriculture, and it's important to the rest of the world. California produces about 1/3 of the food consumed in the United States. So when you think of it from a national, safety perspective and making sure that we never get in a position where we can't feed our people, that we have to import food, is just that, people kind of take for granted. We were a mature country that food is abundant and it's affordable, and that's really the success of the U.S. agriculture and California agriculture as well. And so trying to educate folks on the need for water when, people can't water their lawn in Los Angeles. Well, how come? Well, a farmer needs it to grow food, and for your livelihood. And so it's been a very difficult period of time. And then coming through now a 5-year, very, very severe drought, one of the worst, if not the worst drought that California has ever been through. And with that, a new state law, it's called California doesn't have a groundwater law. It's our water has never been adjudicated to groundwater. And so the state has started that process and called the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And that's going to require that, we look at how much water do we pump from the ground, how much do we get from surface supplies, meaning from the mountains. California has this wonderful Sierra Mountain range, and, snow accumulates on those mountains. And then in the summer when it melts, it's captured in our dams and then moved through rivers down into the agricultural region and used for, ag production, recreation. Cities use it for supply, water supplies, drinking water supplies. So it's been a real challenge for us the last 5 years, and all that with some expanded production in the almond and pistachio and walnut production side. Made it very, very difficult, and obviously political boundaries have been offended, I guess is a way to say it. But again, the difficulty of agriculture is it speaks with such a small base of the population, and in turn, a small vote. So it's been a tough time, but we're working on it. Our county's involved with a project. There was a state bond passed. It's called Proposition 1, providing $7.5 billion to increase water storage in California. Our county is a member of a 5-county region that's trying to or is applying for funds for this Prop 1 money. We've applied for about $1.6 billion to create water storage. There's an existing lake called Millerton Lake, and there's a proposed facility that would go behind that that would increase the dam size, and currently it only holds 500,000 acre feet. It would take it to 1.2 million acre feet, create a more sustainable supply that could capture water. This year, the San Joaquin River, which is the river that moves the water out of the Sierras through Millerton Lake, lost 2.5 million acre feet to the ocean because we couldn't capture it and hold it, for these dry years, and to replenish our groundwater supply, which is now part of this mandate through the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. We have to show sustainability. For every acre foot we pump out of the ground, we have to show a way to put it back in to make our groundwater table sustainable. So all of those things have and continue to impact the direction of the historic agricultural region that we live in, and they're all challenges. And the great thing about this industry and in talking about the Portuguese heritage is we don't give up. We keep working. We put our head down and come up for air every once in a while, and try to figure out the best direction, and then put our head down and go to work again. And I guess that's the process we're in today, is trying to solve some of these major issues that we're faced with.
And so I noticed in looking at the Board of Supervisors, just from name recognition, it looks like there are 2 other Portuguese on the board with you. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So how, because just you're talking a lot about, the work ethic and, put your head down and really figure out this problem. Because it sounds like, because sometimes on this podcast we ask, are there issues in your county that address Portuguese specifically, or is it more general? And it sounds like because of the strong Portuguese population, that, these water issues and these, milk pricing issues that are closing dairies that are affecting Portuguese families. It's even though it's a general county issue, it's affecting a lot of Portuguese people. Do you find that having 3 Portuguese on the board of supervisors provides a unique dynamic? Have you noticed a difference between? I mean, I don't know if they've been on the board for a long time, or, but maybe talk a little bit about how that dynamic works and working with other groups. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's a great relationship. All of them have. One comes from agriculture, the other comes from a trucking company, and then managed a water district, a community water district, and but they're all hardworking folks that understand the value of a dollar and the community that we live in, and while there is never that specific. Hey, this is about, our Portuguese heritage or anything. I think it's ingrained in us just because, the amount of the population that is Portuguese. And, it's just, I guess we, I don't know how to say it. We don't take it for granted, but, it's part of who we are and how we make our decisions and how we go about making those decisions. And so it's wonderful to have folks, that I think our board has a great dynamic to it. We don't always agree on everything, but we're a lot like every Portuguese family that you might come across, at least that I've experienced. In the agricultural industry and other businesses. They're very mindful. They're very conservative. They plan well, and they plan for the tough times. I know that's my grandfather always instilled in me was and I even today, now not so much since I'm not farming, but, from the budgeting side of running an operation and plan for the worst and hope for the best. And I think that's a good mindset to have, especially in the government scenario. There's a lot of demands on funds and, there's never enough to go around and you can't give everybody everything they want. So it's really helpful to have good, solid individuals working with you that have that common sense, and I think one of those things that you don't always find, is that common sense that says, hey, I'd love to give everybody everything, but, common sense tells me that that's just not, realistic, and we need to work from a position of or taking a realistic approach to what we have to deal with, and so no, it's a great relationship, wonderful. Our board, is a really solid group of individuals, and it's been a real pleasure to work with them.
Craig, as you mentioned, we had a little get-together meeting summit in Sacramento here in California, first week of June. There were quite a few Portuguese-Americans of various generations, from immigrants to second, third, fourth generations, who now serve in public office, were present, along with a wide group of community leaders from cultural organizations, social organizations, etc. And I wanted to see if you could comment a little bit on you did already, on how you thought that was an important meeting, but how you see Portuguese Americans of various generations, whether they themselves came over, or was their parents or grandparents or great grandparents. How do you see this network building up? Is this something that could be important for others throughout, not just the region, the San Joaquin Valley, but throughout California, throughout the nation? And PALITICUS is doing that at various fronts, that we could have a little bit maybe of a better network of people knowing, for example, what, and they will now with the podcast, what Craig Pedersen does in Kings County, but what other areas are doing, commissioners or county commissioners are called on the East Coast, or other people in states and local and even at a national level. Is this network something that you think might benefit you personally as a Portuguese American in public service?
Well, I think, again, it goes back, kind of to the heritage side of things for me. And just from a general standpoint, people are so busy today. Our families used to come together so much. And today, here I'm a father of triplets that are getting ready to start college this year. And so the demands of being a father, the demands of being a farmer, the demands of being a supervisor, our lives have become so cluttered with information and things, just things that we think that need to be done, that, our heritage and, the things that we're most proud of about our heritage sometimes slip. And I think it's always important to be able to look back and understand those things, and to be proud of them, and to cherish them. And so organizations like that, for me now in my life, where I look back and, I've probably lived, hopefully I've only lived half my life, but, I'm 56, so I probably lived a little more than half. And, but, they're invaluable. There was a pretty good, there's always been a pretty good contingent, number of folks that contingent of Portuguese Americans in the California state legislature as well. And, one of my friends recently informed me, that he had applied, I think while Assembly member and then Senator Jim Costa was in office, and time there, that, they were able to get actually a minority status established for Portuguese Americans. And this friend of mine established a business where he is supplying products to the state corrections facilities. And a portion of that has to be purchased from minority businesses, at least 30%. And so, it's little things like that provide recognition that, we are a people of California, and that, things haven't always went just right. But I think that's, the job of government is to, create some sort of level playing field for everyone. But, having said that, again, I think it's just bringing that heritage to the country that you live in, and again, that work ethic, and, trying to share that and instill that in other folks, and to, provide knowledge to our youth as well of the further removed you become from, your country's homeland, the more difficult it is to retain that knowledge and to pass it on. And so it's organizations like this that really, for me, bring that home, and to allow myself and others to connect with, folks, Portuguese heritage that are in business, that are in government. That's just gravy on the top, creating those associations, that you may be able to use at some point down the road, and then we always have that heritage in common. So I think that those are kind of the big things for me that really establish in meetings like we had, and truly enjoyed getting that, and has inspired me. I've never been back to the homeland, and I really want to go. I want to go back and touch. One of the folks that was there made the comment, that he had went for the first time, I don't know, about a year ago. And he said, when I stepped off the airplane and I took the first breath, my whole body just kind of relaxed and felt like, I was home.
Yeah.
And so,
one of the questions that we usually end the podcast with is, if there's some bits of advice or a call to action. And I think you gave a really great summary call to action there, and in your last comments there. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think it's a great message that I hope our listeners take to heart, and really, follow your lead. We have come up on our time, unfortunately, though, and I know that we could keep going, and so I think we'll just have to have you back on, in a few months, and catch up with what you're doing then. But in addition to your great comments, then any final thoughts you'd like to end with?
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to connect, and to be able to not force myself, but to allow myself to reconnect with my heritage, and it's things like this that allow that to happen. And sometimes, if we're on our own, it's like, well, I've got something better to do. But when the opportunity comes and presents itself, it really allows you the autonomy to kind of take a moment and look deeper. And so that's what I appreciate about this opportunity and the past meetings that have been held, is that, you get to take a moment, maybe of a bit of selfish time, and say, that's my heritage, and I need to remember, pass it on to my family.
Agreed. 100%. Yeah. Thank you so much, Craig. We really appreciate your time, and best of luck. Keep up the good work. And thank you, Denise, again for your time. And thanks to our listeners out there. If you haven't subscribed yet, please click that subscribe button on either SoundCloud or iTunes, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And please share this podcast with friends and family. We need to further the dialogue and get our community much more involved in public service and participating in the political conversation. So thanks everybody out there. Thanks again, Craig and Denise. And until next time, have a great day. Thanks all.
See you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Politicus, the official podcast of PALITICUS, the Portuguese-American Leadership Council of the United States. PALITICUS is the premier national organization representing the interests of the Portuguese-American community at large. To learn more about PALITICUS and how to become a member or to make a donation, visit www.palcus.org. To submit feedback or suggestions about the podcast, email us at palcus@palcus.org. The views and opinions expressed by the hosts and guests of the show are not endorsed by PALITICUS.